insurance for the first time on their parents' policy because they can compare it. This is about the future and about whether we're going to just stay with these patterns that have proven to let us down or create a different future. It begins with a renewed commitment to education, to training, to science and technology, and to an affordable healthcare system without which there will be enough, there'll never be enough money to invest in our future, and we won't be able to balance the budget. And that's the last thing I want to say. I want to hit that again. We've had 4% inflation for the first time in 50 years, 2 years in a row. And under the healthcare bill, there are lots of incentives for healthcare plans to start paying healthcare providers not by the procedure, which is driving costs through the roof, but for overall performance. In other words, you enroll in a plan and the providers get a certain amount of money, and if they spend less than that, you give them part of the profits, and if they spend more than that, they have to pay part of the excess. And that is one of the things that's driving this. You might be interested to know that it is pre-Republican primary phase when Governor Romney signed that bill in Massachusetts. Massachusetts had very expensive health care, and they still do. But because, in large measure, of the individual mandate and changing payment methods, they have gone from the second most expensive system in the country to the seventh most. So he has renounced the only part of his record that has really worked, that he could be advocating. This is not a close question. And the last thing I want to say, it's not what kind of country you want to live in. Do you want to live in a country where the goal in an interdependent world is to celebrate our diversity or drive a stake through the heart of it? Do you want to live in a country where the goal is shared prosperity or you're on your own? Do you want to live in a country where the goal is constructive cooperation or constant conflict? Do you want to live in a country where you get all your emotional satisfaction from living in a state of constant resentment? Or you get high every day because you're making something good happen for yourself?
Getting high every day.
It's not rocket science. I couldn't believe the other day when the president's opponent said that the 47% of the American people who don't pay income tax just want to hang around, be dependent on the government. You know, we just had to wean them off of that because they didn't want to pay income tax. Now, a guy with a tax account in the Cayman Islands, that's like Congressman Ryan attacking Barack Obama for having the same Medicare savings he did. When you really bust somebody for doing what you did, it takes a lot of gall, you know? But let me tell you who those 47% are. A lot of them are college students who are adults but don't have income. A lot of them are seniors who have depleted their assets, and especially if they're living in nursing homes and getting Medicaid to help pay for it. Most of them are families who work. And until this Tea Party faction took over the Republican Party and strangled it so much that the oxygen stopped running to the brain. Bipartisan support for the things that took 61% of that 47% out from under the income tax because they honored work and family. Because we didn't think no American in a policy-making position, thought for the longest time that if you worked 40 hours a week and you had children in your home, they should not be in poverty if it was within the power of the tax code to lift you out. Tax that are working and earning a living. They do pay payroll tax for Social Security, Medicare. They do pay state and local tax. They pay plenty of tax, but they don't pay federal income tax because of what had been a bipartisan policy. I think the first earned income tax credit was signed by President Ford. President Reagan said it was the best anti-poverty program he ever saw. I doubled it, as I promised you I would in 1992. Then, second term, we put in a child tax credit. When President Bush succeeded me and he did all those tax credits for upper income people, the one thing he did for middle class people was to double the child tax credit. Then when President Obama came in and the economy was flat on its back, he expanded the earned income tax credit, among other things, to help working people who had more than 3 children, because the benefits have been capped at 3 children. This thing has had the support of Republicans and Democrats for nearly 40 years, based on the simple premise that this is a country that honors work and family. Should not have who are working with kids who don't pay federal income tax, they would love to make enough money to pay federal income tax. They would love it if the real family median income were not where it was in 1995. They would love it to see in America growing again with new jobs again and rising wages again, and they'd love to get that tax bill because it would mean that they were moving on up and so were their kids. That's the truth. You got to decide what kind of America you want to live in. And this amount of inequality, this amount of working poverty is a terrible constraint on our growth. It's a constraint on our growth. That's why we have to create more jobs, we have to educate more. And if you look at this, the plan for balancing the budget, the president says, okay, we'll have $2.5 to $3 of spending cuts for every dollar of new revenues. But we can't just choke the federal budget so that we don't have any money to invest in your future, in the science and technology and research and development that will create the jobs of the 21st century, in helping everybody go to college or to community college or be in a training program that really works, and in taking care of people who through no fault of their own cannot take care of themselves. And so I got a little laugh at the convention when I said their budget defies arithmetic, but just think of it. I watched the Republican convention and they had that debt column on it, you know, the whole time. Real impressive. High tech, keep up with that debt, going up, up, up. But here's what they didn't tell you. We never, ever had a large structural deficit in peacetime with economic growth until 1981. In the 12 years before I became president, I don't know how many times I said this 20 years ago when I was campaigning in New Hampshire, the national debt quadrupled with all this trickle-down economics talk. So it took us 4 years to turn around, and I gave you 4 surplus budgets. And then doubled again in times of economic growth. Because trickle-down economics doesn't work, it doesn't add up. Arithmetic works better. So then we're having a campaign in which, with a straight face, President Obama's opponents are running a debt clock at their convention. And they said, see this debt? Oh, this is a terrible thing. Here's what we're going to do about it. We're going to take action. Action number one, have $5 trillion more of tax cuts and make it $5 trillion bigger than it already is. Action number two, increase the defense budget and the interest on the debt to pay for it over a decade, $2 trillion more than the Pentagon wants. How are you going to spend it? I'll tell you about that when I figure it out. So their debt plan is to make it $7 trillion worse. How can you take this seriously? It's not about debt or arithmetic, it's about ideology. It's about trickle-down economics. It's about increasing inequality. You have to decide. Every young person here who has more tomorrows than yesterday, you have to decide. Do you want an America where we celebrate our diversity, where we welcome our immigrants, where we give everybody a chance to have a good education, start a business, and pursue their dreams, and where people wake up every day thinking about how to make something good happen instead of who they're supposed to be mad at? Woo! Do you want an America where people turn on televisions or computers and soak up information to learn things about how they can improve themselves and understand different people differently and get a grip on what's going on in the economy? Or do you want all this modern technology to be wasted on clever people who can build our resentments against one another, our sense of blaming? Do you really want to keep on with this anti-government politics when the only successful countries on earth are those that have both a strong economy and a strong government and often a strong non-governmental sector, and they all work together instead of figuring out how to gut each other like cold fish every day?